So the other day I got Emily Henry's newest release, Great Big Beautiful Life, and as soon as I buy like a new release or I'm really excited about a book, I usually go on TikTok to like see what everybody's yapping about the book. And as soon as I opened the app, I saw that so many people had polarizing views on if the book was good or not. The book just came out. How do y'all have this visceral of a reaction over Emily Henry? Like, she's a pretty well-known author. A lot of people like her. And it made me start thinking, like, BookTok can be a very, very happy place. It can also be a very, very drama-filled place. So that got me thinking about how I wanted to do a BookTok Iceberg video. And if you don't know what an iceberg video is, it's basically where people take a really, really deep dive about different cases or different examples of an iceberg. So a lot of people do it with, like, conspiracy theories and things like that. And I thought it would be fun to do one on BookTok because there are so many things that have happened on this app that, like, it just should be compiled into one big video. So with that being said, we're going to have 3 different tiers to this iceberg. First one being the surface, also known as what everyone sees. Then we have tier 2, industry influencers, gatekeepers behind the scenes. And then we have deep dive, cultural forces, and community controversies. So let's go into tier 1, which is the surface. Now, this is honestly, I feel like this is like going in stages. So in tier 1 of BookTok, that's when you really just go onto the app and you see people talking about books. This could be like cozy book recommendations, like what to read for summer, what to read for fall. I feel like those are like the big ones there. Viral reading challenges. Like, I know you've seen like a 24-hour reading vlog or reading X amount of books for the week or how much I read in a week, things like that. And then emotional reactions when it comes to books. I know the most popular videos on TikTok are probably videos of people like boohoo crying or screaming and yelling over a book or over a fictional character that they like. And I just feel like that is like what you're gonna get when you get onto BookTok. The community feeling of getting on BookTok, especially for like the first time. I know when I joined in 2020, that's what really got me into reading, which was, it just felt like a really, really big book club. Like, I remember reading some of the same books as some creators that I liked, and it was just really, really exciting to see people who liked books like me and who may have just got into reading, and it was a really, really fun space there. So yeah, next we can get into the popular genres, because I think when you think about BookTok, you think about the same like 4 or 5 genres, that being romance, fantasy, young adult, thrillers, and dark romance. That's 5, right? Yeah, that's 5. This is like kind of like the subculture of BookTok. Like, there's romance talk, fantasy talk, thriller talk, and I feel like once you're on BookTok, you kind of gotta find your people to kind of like figure out like, hey, I like this kind of book, so I'm gonna follow these creators, and they'll start coming onto your feed. And I think that just shows how the power of TikTok and BookTok specifically is in charge for like finding gems and finding authors that you have never read before, but also some polarizing things that you can see on the app, which we'll get into later. Some surface level drama when it comes to BookTok is definitely cancel culture. I think there are multiple creators who have gotten canceled, quote unquote, because I feel like cancel culture really isn't a thing. People get canceled for like a week, they like block their account or whatever, and then they'll come back acting like nothing happened. An example I can remember on this is definitely when it comes to Kira Lewis. She is a BookToker who, I know you've seen her videos before. She's like all over, well, she's actually blocked on my account because I was tired of seeing her videos, but
Kiera is a popular person on TikTok, and a while ago, she and the Seattle Kraken media team started posting thirst traps about the players. But the one specific player was Alex Winberg, number 21. Kiera would post about how they looked and include sexual innuendos, but of course, other people were doing the same thing. And the Kraken grew followers when it was found that there were romance novels based on hockey players, and they fed on that, even putting on their bio the words book talk. They even invited Kiera to a game and surprised her with a Kraken jersey that said book talk. Things really started getting a bit out of hand with some fans, and very lewd comments were being made about Alex, especially on this video.
21! Can you do something? Oh, yes, you can do something for me.
Now, you can hear Kiara yelling some inappropriate things about him. She wasn't aware that Alex could hear through the glass, but those comments continued by others, both on her posts and on Alex's own social media posts. Pretty gross comments, actually. Alex's wife came forward recently about this video, was posted months ago, and asked everyone to stop. And you can pause to read this if you like. She basically says that if these comments were made to women, the men would be kicked out in a heartbeat, which she's right. LSU Olivia Dunn is a prime example. Because of unruly male fans, she now has to have a bodyguard. But she included Kiara's name in the screenshot, which then sent a ton of hate to Kiara. And now Kiara finds out that the Kraken has unfollowed her and they have deleted their own thirst trap videos that they made. The pushback for some is that Alex's wife thought it was funny in the beginning and now she's backtracking. She used to call her husband the panty dropper of BookTok. Well, you are allowed to backtrack, y'all. You can take your consent back if it gets past a level that you are uncomfortable with. Even Alex said that were some horrible sexual comments that were made on family pictures that they posted with their son. The thing is, Kiara reached out to her by DM. She never actually got a response. Alex's wife could have done the same thing, but she took it to the public and included Kiara's name in it. You've also got the side of BookTok that wants nothing to do with this drama. They claim no queen of TikTok and they just want everyone to go back to reading and stop sexualizing these people in real life. They want you to remember these characters are not real. In the end, the Kraken social media team should have just reached out to Kiara and asked her to stop, but they didn't. So we are here now. But what are y'all thinking? Okay, bye.
I remember she would like be boo-hoo crying over like Harry Potter, and J.K. Rowling is not a good person. One reason I didn't like her, and two, she was in big drama because she basically like sexualized fans on a hockey team, and people were telling her like, girl, that's kind of weird, you should not do that. She was like, well, I don't care, like whatever. I'm gonna insert a video here, but it was just crazy take for her, and people canceled her for like 2 weeks, but she still has like millions and millions of followers. So, but I think that's just an example for social media in general. Nobody really gets canceled. Also, the debates on representation, especially when it comes to people that look like me or, you know, other people of color on the app, do not get as much love as white people on the app, or even authors in general. Like, a lot of people of color authors don't get as much attention or traction on BookTok as white authors, and I think that's just not good. And I did want to mention that at the beginning because I think that is a major topic of discussion on BookTok in those type of videos. So that is really all for tier 1. I didn't really have a lot to like deep dive into because you like one book video, these are the type of videos that are going to pop up on your feed. Next, let's get into tier 2, industry and influencers. I did a little bit of research about this because I did not realize there are a lot of Reddit threads about people sharing their opinions on influencer on social media and influencers on BookTok in general. So the first thing I found was literary agents and review gatekeepers. So I think this is really big in like the publishing industry. Is agencies decide on which authors get deals. Obviously, that's just how the industry works. And a lot of BookTokers who may be sent books from like a publishing house or an author that they want to promote their books can really skew on if a book gets views or not, especially if it's like a debut author or I don't know what another example would be, but like, you know, I think another example that's just coming into my head is especially when influencers become writers, they kind of leave the book reviewing space because they now know like, hey, I'm an author now, I'm not just a person who talks about books. So they really stop like rating books. I know.
But then the question becomes, why do so many influencers want to like pursue authorship as a goal? And Terry Wen in the cultural criticism newsletter Dirt, who I collaborate with, has this to say about it. One writes that authorship is a persona to aspire towards and a step in one's self-branding journey, and calls it the ultimate influencer status symbol. But then why exactly is bookishness and the figure of the author so aspirational, including for people who are already thriving as creators of online content? I think it might have to do with this desire among readers and writers and influencers alike to sort of bridge the gap between online existence and then corporeal reality. So the Dirt piece quotes the writer Jessica Pressman, who points out that books have become aesthetic objects that blur the boundaries between reality and fiction. I take this to mean that books are more than the sum of their parts, right? So they're this unique blend of the tangible and the intangible. They're physical objects that are full of symbolic, abstract markings which signify and transmit ideas. So they become a shorthand online for a tie between digital reality and offline reality. And for influencers who are craving like legitimacy outside of the digital space of social media, they're a useful way to expand beyond the digital. Now, social media, and especially TikTok, has become a huge determiner of real-world book sales. And yes, writers like Colleen Hoover are exceptional, but they also prove the broader rule that writers at this point don't really have the luxury of solitude, even though we may have this sort of romantic image of the solitary author figure. A lot of writers feel the need to either become pseudo-influencers selling their own books, or to kind of become known among influencers who will then go and do the promotional work on their behalf. As one puts it, the distinction between writer and influencer has become harder to parse. The two are increasingly inextricable. Most writers have to court an audience.
I can think of a couple in my head of like people who are like, hey, I'm gonna write a book now, so I'm not gonna really be rating the books that I read because they don't want to be in the reviewer and author space. I feel like you kind of have to pick one when it comes to that, which is kind of makes sense, honestly. Industries favor familiar names, limiting diversity. Now, I know like when I say these book authors, you're gonna know who they are. Sarah J. Maas. I have Sarah J. Maas, Kirsta and Rebecca Ritchie, Riley Sager, just to name a few. Those are some examples of like really, really well known. Frida McFadden. Those are some examples of really, really known authors that have fame, recognition. Colleen Hoover, even though I don't really like her, that just popped in my head. Like, you know these authors' names, but especially on BookTok, I feel like only the same 5 authors get shown every time, and that might just be my feed, but it's like, where are all the other people? Where are all the people of color, the debut authors who can't really catch a break when it comes to releasing their work, because there are so many people shielding these really, really big creators, like Emily Henry too. Like, I just bought her book, but like I also have other, indie authors or newer authors on my shelves as well. But especially when you first get into BookTok, you only see the same 5 authors until you really like try to find your taste on the app. Another thing that popped in my head is because I know a lot of creators who have done this. Some of them are my favorites, are the lifestyle to book influencer pipeline. I know you can think of a handful of creators who have gone from blogging their life, being a lifestyle creator, to being a BookTok or booktuber creator. And I honestly have a couple theories on this as it comes to my head. One, I think lifestyle creators pivot to book content when they, realize that lifestyle content is really, really hard to get into because you have to appeal to a lot of people too, especially watch like vlogs and stuff. You have to be either, your life has to be interesting, or you have to know how to like finesse the algorithm, like how to get people to watch your life. You have to have an interesting life. You have to have something like special or unique. And not saying that these people aren't unique, but there's just like a kind of like a twist you have to put on your content to make it people want to click it and watch it, because you can't just post a regular day in my life and expect people to watch it. But if you make a day in the life about, oh, I'm reading this new release, then people who read that new release are going to watch your video. And I've seen this a lot in creators who maybe their views are a little stale, or their views are just not what they want them to be, and they just start getting into another niche because they're like, hey, this isn't working for me, I'm going to try something else. And books are a big, big thing since like 2020. People want to be a part of that space. Like, I feel like reading has like flipped its head of like, hey, reading's cool again. So now everybody and their mom wants to be known as like a reader and wants to make money from reading. I think another thing that could be why people go from lifestyle to like a specific niche, this being books in general, people like their privacy. I remember when I started making videos like in middle school, so this is not my first rodeo on this. I used to want to be like a vlogger or something. I kept like, I don't really like people knowing like where I live or like what I do, so 9 to 5 vlogs or anything of the sort where other people in my life had to be on video, I just didn't feel comfortable with that because my family didn't subscribe to be on social media, only I did. And I just thought that like whenever I would get big, I didn't want myself to be like easily noticeable. So I definitely think with lifestyle creators, you have to film a lot of your life, like many parts of your life are on camera. So if you're tired of people like butting into your life, then you pivot to a new niche. I think that's another reason why book influencers or lifestyle influencers can go into the book space, because they don't want to be known for their life. They want to be known for the books they read. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Do you? I just think it was interesting because I've seen that shift in a lot of people. The thing I wanted to talk about was pen names and author branding. So when I think of pen names, I think of authors who either don't use their name or they change pen names depending on the genre they're writing. An example that I recently found was the author Dani Francis. This is really like a debut author, but she wrote a dystopian book but marketed it as Hunger Games for adults, which is already weird. Like, girl, did you read Hunger Games? I don't think you'd want a book to be known as Hunger Games for adults. Just by the premise of the book, it made people feel a certain way and wonder why and who was behind this book.
Let's spill the tea about Dani Francis because I can't keep quiet. Now, I absolutely understand the want to know who this author is behind this pen name, because if they are someone who has been, proven to be a terrible human being, then of course we don't want to support them. However, authors write under pen names for so many different reasons. It could be that they still work full time and they don't, they work in an industry where this would get them into some trouble. It could be that they are doing it just to protect their family. It could be that they just don't want to have their real name out there because they know that this book is going to blow up and big name authors who haven't been writing under a pen name have had real issues with some really bad people in the world when they get to a level of fame. So tread carefully, BookTok, because to me, like, coming as an author, this is not the vibe. This is really not the vibe. If this person gets outed and they are a genuine human being who just wrote a book and got a book deal, and you out their actual name, it's not good. It's not good. So stop trying, please.
Since it was a debut author, like, the author's Instagram was fairly new. They really didn't have a lot of details about themselves on the Instagram, and people were like, oh, this could be a pen name for an already well-known author who wants to get into a new niche, because unless you're like a Rebecca Yarros who wrote Fourth Wing, she used to write romance, I think strictly like contemporary romance, but then she changed to do fantasy and she just kept the same name. So you could do that, but I think some authors, if they want to be like completely brand new and they don't want their stuff to mesh, but I think that can cause some mystery too, of like people want to know who this author is. I think a lot of times now social media is so much of like, I want to see your life first, I don't really care about what you're offering. People want to know a lot about the author who's writing these books, and people are like, who is this person? Because they barely had a social media, they barely had anything on their Instagram. It seemed like their Instagram was ran by like a social media manager, not even about the author. So I'll insert some clips here about like the whole deal, because I'm probably not explaining it well enough, but I thought that was really interesting. And some people also thought the book was written by AI, but you can't copyright AI stuff, so that was kind of like not a true conspiracy theory, because you can't copyright AI right now. Next thing, which I think is honestly in multiple industries, is devaluing of women's stories by critics and society. Romance has been deemed like a subpar genre for years. Like, people like, Emily Henry, Kennedy Ryan, those are the type of authors I like. They write such good romance on top of putting in actual, plot and stories that are just more than romance. But romance has always been deemed as just fluffy or like a feel-good type of story, when there can be a lot of depth to romance and women's fiction in general. And I feel like you can see this in, especially when it comes to men joining BookTok, which I feel like I did not put this in my notes, but this is just popping into my head. But when men join BookTok, their comments are flooded with women like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, I love when a man reads or whatever. But you got 5 other women who's been on BookTok for years who are not getting this level of recognition just because they're a woman. And it's so saturated with women on the app. As soon as a man pops up, they're like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever, I'm thirsting over you, like some weird stuff. And it's like, well, why don't women get that reaction of, I know some cool BookTok creators and booktubers in general who are like, cool. And I'm like, why don't they have more views? Why don't they have more of a following? And it's like, what's going on here?
So no one asked, but of course I'm going to give my 2 cents on this Australian guy that is currently going viral on BookTok. He posted a video and it went viral, and now he's almost at 100,000 followers, and it's only been 2 or 3 days. And this is no hate towards that guy. I'm not going to even talk about him. And a lot of the comment is also just women objectifying him, but I don't write that hard for men problems. They can write for themselves. So the discourse surrounding that, which I wholeheartedly agree with, is how many women put effort into their BookTok, just like their content creation in general. But the point that I wanted to make is just how as women, we should keep raising the standards. We read these books, and we still, all a man has to do is post a video talking about books, and the bar's underneath the ground, girls. Let's stand up and raise the bar a little bit higher. Men don't. When was the last time you had a horde of men on a popular women BookTok? Unless it's to berate us or make fun of what we read or say all we read is smut. And even then, what about it?
Is this misogyny? What's going on? So, and I think it's just also a bias towards marketing, awards, and industry recognition of all. Even male authors and female authors. You could do a whole deep dive there too, girl. But we're going to just stay a little bit surface level. If you want to see a video about that, let me know in the comments. I know y'all will. Next, let's get into the deep dive, which is cultural forces and community controversies. Now, some of these are going to be a little controversial, because the first one is, I think that book bans can be seen as marketing stunts. Now, before you get your panties in a twist, I want to say that I know book bans are terrible. There's so many books that are getting banned for no reason in the United States. I think when it happens, people get more interested in the books, which causes people to go out to their communities or to whatever and buy the book and read it.
I have a new reading list for all the book lovers out there, and it comes from the American Library Association, who compiles a list of the 10 most challenged books in the US each year. Their goal is to combat censorship and inform the public of these books to keep them alive. And in 2024, there were attempts to remove 2,452 unique titles from public libraries and schools. And interestingly, 72% of those attempts to censor these books came from pressure groups and government entities. That means elected officials, board members, and administrators, to say the least. As per the ALA themselves, quote, the lists are based on information from confidential reports filed by library professionals and community members, as well as news stories published throughout the United States. Of these 10 books, I would like you to guess the 2 to 3 main reasons why these were the most challenged. Queerness, race, and social justice, as expected, unfortunately. Here's a couple of books from that list, so feel free to add them to your summer reading list, and have a good day.
So I think book banning can honestly gain curiosity and sales for an author if their book gets banned, especially if it's a really, really popular book already. People are going to go support the author even more because they're like, dang, their book is getting banned in schools. Let me go buy it for little Jimmy so he can read it on his own. And I actually found a Reddit thread, does banning a book make it more interesting? And the comment says, the other day my history teacher said that banning books back in Reformation times actually got read and remembered more. He also, that if he was an author, he would want his book to get banned. That got me wondering, do people want to read banned books more, or does it make it harder to read because access is restricted? And some of the comments were like, yes, people will seek it out because they want to know what the controversy was about. It goes for all media, films, TV, music, etc. Basically like those parental guidance labels on music albums. So I think that's just showing that like when a book gets banned, especially if it's already popular in like the mainstream, people are going to want to read it even more because they're going to be like, wait, why was this book banned in the first place? And they're going to start talking about the book more to get more publicity and marketing. So makes you think. Like next one, we're going to talk about the overconsumption culture and influencer pressure. Now, if you've been on my channel for a little bit, I did make a video about BookTok and overconsumption that you guys seem to enjoy as well. So if you want more of a deep dive on that, I will link it above. But obviously overconsumption is a problem everywhere, and especially when it comes to BookTok, a lot of big creators are doing like the massive book hauls and massive peer pressure for people who are just regular readers who are like, dang, I don't have a whole bookshelf with all my books on it. Let me go buy 5 books from the store right now. It causes FOMO, especially for like new releases and even like special editions and stuff. I think it can cause major FOMO, which you can see a lot.
This might be an unpopular opinion, but I truly believe that BookTok is contributing too heavily to the overconsumption of books. I've been seeing a lot of BookTokers recently going through their physical TBRs where they'll have hundreds of just unread books sitting on their shelves. You do not need a physical copy of every single book you read, especially because you're not going to love every single book you read. So why is it going to be sitting at home on your shelves if you don't 100% love it? You know, I feel like the e-reader community is especially guilty of this. You don't need a physical copy of a book if you have it on an e-reader. The only, I feel like, exception to this is if, you know, it's a 5-star read of the year. Yeah, I can appreciate buying the physical copy because you want to have it on your shelves. I can also appreciate having, you know, different variations of the same book, but I feel like at like 3 or 4 variations of the same book, that's where we can draw the line. This is why I'm such a big advocate for libraries. There's already so many resources libraries can offer you, but the going and trading of books is one of the main resources of a library, and it just makes it so convenient, and libraries are already losing funding. So maybe next time you want to buy a book, maybe think, maybe my local library can have that book, and pick up a card and check it out.
And it also can make reading seem as like it's a race instead of just a fun hobby for people to enjoy. Like, oh, I read 3 books this week, or see how many books I read with the 9 to 5. It's like, girl, I'm working. I don't have time to read 3 books a week. Like, calm down. The next one I had was the tropification of books. Now, I know this is a major issue, especially when it comes to people, instead of writing a plot, they just write for tropes. Like, I know, you know, Grumpy Sunshine, forced proximity, enemies to lovers, friends to lovers, you know, things like that. People are just writing based on tropes nowadays. They're not just writing.
One thing that I've noticed, and I'm pretty sure you have also noticed this as well, is that books have always been plot driven or character driven, but because of the rise of TikTok and because of the rise of social media, books are now trope driven. And now what do I mean by trope driven? I mean that the plot development and the character development is only there for the sake of the tropes, and it only caters to the tropes instead of the tropes catering to the development of the plot and the development of the characters. It's almost like the plot is only moving along and the characters are only developing for the sake of the trope. And it's like the author is trying to put in as many tropes as they possibly could just so that the readers can go ahead and read the book. But sometimes not all tropes work within that book, and it almost feels forced in a way, and it feels like the plot and the characters only moved forward so that it can meet that trope. I'm not saying this is necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. I'm just saying that this is something that I observed recently. Because I will say that I am a sucker for tropes, but only if it is done right.
For a plot, like you can have a couple of tropes filled, like sprinkled in a little bit, but we don't need to know every single plot. And I actually saw a TikTok, which I'll insert it after this, but some tropes can be spoilers, especially if it's like a surprise pregnancy or something. It's like, right, what the trope is, what if I wanted to be surprised? No, I'm not, because I know what the trope is. And I feel like it does limit creativity and diverse storytelling if you're just writing the top five tropes everybody wants. And it's like, girl, did this even fit the story you had before you started putting all these tropes in? Had on here was the hive mind mentality when it comes to book talk, and I think this is major when it comes to like either loving or hating a book, especially with like these, like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna say it, like these book girly groups. I feel like when one likes a book, they all have to like it, or if one hates a book, they all have to hate it. And it's like, girl, you know, you have your personal opinion, right? Like you have your own opinion, you don't have to go with the status quo. And that can be said for just regular books in general. There are polarizing of like, oh my gosh, this is the best book ever, and oh my gosh, I hated this book. An example I have is I forget what it was called. I don't know. I'm going to put the book up here, but I read this book for a book club, and I went to go look at the reviews on Goodreads to see like, hey, did other people like this book? And there were so many people dogging the book, and I was like, this book was actually pretty good. Why are people dogging on it? And I just think the hive mind mentality of like, either you love a book or you hate it. There's no in between. And it's like, girl, I give a couple 3 stars nowadays. Like, it's not the end of the world. I think BookTok can definitely have a hive mind mentality when it comes to major authors like Sarah J. Maas. Either you love her or you hate her. Riley Sager. Like, these are just some of the authors I know that you either love them, like you ride hard for them, or you could never read a book by them ever again. And it's like, can we get a little bit of like gray matter in this situation, you know? So yeah, but that is all for the that is all for the BookTok Iceberg. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If there are any topics you want to see as an iceberg, I will gladly dive deep into them for you. It was very, very fun to like just deep dive random booktube and BookTok topics and controversies. But yeah, it just shows that BookTok is a very multi-layered hashtag on TikTok. There are any other things you want to see me deep dive on, leave them in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for all your love on all the videos I've been making recently. I really, really appreciate it. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, all that fun stuff. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.